Hello and welcome to Scream Theory. In this video, I want to talk about the differences between fry screaming and false chord screaming, and I want to help train your ear so that when you listen to somebody scream, you can make a really good educated guess as to what technique they might be using at any given time for any given vocal effect that they might produce. Now, sometimes it can be pretty obvious to tell whether a person might be false chord screaming or fry screaming, but in a lot of instances, it's not super obvious, and that is because both of these techniques can achieve extremely similar results. Now, this is something that took me years to fully understand, because back when I first started learning metal vocals, and even for a few years after, I thought I had a good understanding of the differences between fry and false chord screams. A lot of people have a tendency to put each technique in its own box and say, fry screams let you do this, and false chord screams let you do that. Fry screams sound like this, and false chord screams sound like that. But in a lot of cases, it's not that simple. And in the past decade or so, people have really pushed the boundaries and are taking these techniques to their absolute extreme. And truthfully, both techniques can give you extremely similar results. Whether you want really deep, brutal lows or piercing highs, maybe you want a more punchy and emotional sounding mid-range scream for metalcore music, or maybe you just want to sing and add a little bit of distortion into your singing voice. Both techniques can allow you to accomplish this, but the quality of the way it sounds, the quality and the tone of the distortion is going to be slightly different. And to an untrained ear, it may be extremely difficult to hear those differences, but to a trained ear, you can absolutely hear the differences between fry screams and false chord screams. But what I want you to understand is, truthfully, the only real difference between fry screaming and false chord screaming is the physical anatomical structure in the larynx that we use to produce the distortion in our voice. Fry screams are produced by contracting the muscles of the vocal cords and the other laryngeal muscles in such a way that it alters the vibrations of the true chords, allowing them to produce distortion of your voice. Whereas in false chord screaming, the distortion is produced by vibrating the false vocal cords, also known as the vestibular folds. Now, there is a small percentage of the metal vocals community who believe that fry screams are not produced by the true chords, that it's all just different variations of how you use the false chords. I've even had a couple people try to tell me that the difference between a fry scream and a false chord scream is the amount of air pressure you push, that it's all just done with the false chords, and that vibrating the false chords at a lower air pressure produces a fry scream, and vibrating the false chords with higher air pressure produces a false chord scream. But the vast majority of the metal vocals community accepts that fry screams are produced by the true chords because people who have been practicing these techniques for years and years and have developed the level of sensory awareness to know when they're using their false chords and when they're using their true chords will tell you without a shadow of a doubt that fry screams are produced with the true chords, that we are using our true chords to make these sounds. But this is not a topic that I want to debate in this video. This is just something I want to address so that you are aware in case you've heard otherwise. But once again, both techniques allow us to achieve extremely similar results, with the main differences in the way each technique sounds being the overall quality of the distortion, the little inflections and embellishments that you can do to add spice or more character to your voice. Also, with time and with training your ear, you'll start to notice little patterns of pronunciation that fry screaming vocalists tend to develop, and other patterns of pronunciation that false chord screaming vocalists tend to develop. And lastly, it is possible to perform both techniques simultaneously, giving you the best of both worlds. And in these cases where people are really skilled with both techniques and can do them at the same time, those are the instances where these patterns of pronunciation tend to not hold up so well, and it becomes really challenging to hear that, oh, this scream that they're doing is just an isolated fry scream, or this scream that they're doing is a low-pitched false chord and fry scream at the same time. But once again, that comes with time and listening to a lot of different vocalists, as well as practicing both techniques, and practicing both techniques to a lot of different vocalists. But I'm going to try to summarize the many, many, many years that I have spent practicing these techniques and developing my understanding of what is possible with each technique into just this one video, so that if you're a beginner, this is hopefully going to really train your ear, or maybe you're a little more advanced and you've been practicing for a few years, but you're still kind of confused about what is possible with each technique. I want to give you that knowledge so that if there's a particular sound or style or effect you're really trying to go for, at least you'll know which technique will allow you to get there. But first things first, I want to show you something because I'm a very visual learner, and over time I've kind of developed this mental image of what I think of, the picture of what I mean when I say the quality of the distortion for a fry scream versus a false chord scream. So this picture kind of represents the mental image I have when I hear a fry scream. The black semicircle at the bottom of the picture represents the fact that the fry scream has this really nice foundational sound. It really fills in the space in your scream. It gives you this nice base of support. And the black color represents the richness, the rich sound of the fry screaming distortion. It's very toned. But all of this empty white space also represents the lack of dynamic sound in the fry screaming distortion. Although it sounds really good, what you get is kind of what you get. There's this really rich and thick undertone that has this solid foundation, but that's kind of it. There's not this extra roughness. It's kind of missing something. And this picture represents my mental image for the false chord screaming distortion. The false chords produce a rougher and kind of more dynamic sounding distortion that kind of rises above and produces overtones. And although you can get really good at false chord screams and get a lot of tone and color in the sound, the gray color kind of represents the lack of tone, the flappier kind of serrated sound of the false chords vibrating. And as you notice with the empty white space in the middle of the picture, there is kind of this lack of foundational sound. There's this space that isn't being filled in super well that kind of results in a slightly more hollower sound of the distortion of false chord screams. But something that a lot of false chord vocalists do to fill in this empty space is to perform a projected yell with their true chords. So they're getting some true chord engagement in there, and it's adding more tone and just making the scream sound more well-rounded. So it's kind of like your projected yell voice being roughed up and distorted by the vibrations of the false chords. Ooh. And then this picture represents someone performing false chord and fry screams simultaneously. You get the best of both worlds. You have the rich, thick undertone of the fry scream, really creating the foundational sound and filling in the space. And then you have the dynamics of the false chords vibrating above, creating this extra roughness. And when you hear someone performing both at the same time, it creates this massive distortion that attacks your ears. You have the fry scream producing this nice, solid foundation, that space being filled in within the sound, and then you have the false chords producing that dynamic roughness that's kind of rising above, and it creates so much depth within a scream. There's just so much going on at any given time. Furthermore, there are certain words I like to use as descriptors to kind of talk about how each technique sounds. For instance, I think of fry screams as sounding kind of screechy, staticky, raspy. Sometimes they can sound very tight and thin. Now, each one of those words may not stick very well for every variation of fry screaming, but I think for the most common fry screaming styles that people use, a lot of those words will stick very well. And I think of false chord screams as sounding very rough, hollow. Sometimes they can sound kind of rough, but also smooth at the same time. Gravelly, sometimes they can sound kind of wet. There's this like fluid nature to the way it sounds. But I try to avoid words like growl or guttural or shriek, because that's essentially just onomatopoeia. That is creating a word based off of the way something sounds. But that doesn't really tell you much about the technique a person is doing to create that sound, so I prefer to use words like low-pitched fry scream, mid-ranged false chord scream, high-pitched hybrid scream, which is a fry scream and a false chord scream done at the same time. I do have two exceptions to this, though, which is pig squeal, because you can't really get any more specific than that. That perfectly describes the sound you hear. However, pretty much every pig squeal is done through fry screaming. That iconic squeal sound is produced with a fry scream. You can kind of do it with false chord screams, but it just doesn't have the same effect. And then tunnel throat, because that can be performed with either fry screams or false chord screams. It's more of a positioning of your throat. I don't know who coined the word tunnel throat, but it actually works perfectly, because when you are in the tunnel throat positioning, the epiglottis actually takes on a more semicircular shape. And you can see this on Brandon Kennedy's 2017 endoscopy. And I think those descriptor words tie in really well with the patterns of pronunciation that a lot of people tend to develop. And you'll typically hear these pronunciation patterns in mostly deathcore vocalists or vocalists who are screaming in a very scary and brutal way. But the fry screaming pronunciation pattern typically has this very abrupt and almost kind of tight sounding transition from syllable to syllable. And you can almost feel the rapid opening and closing of a person's jaw as they pronounce words while fry screaming very quickly. And most false chord screaming vocalists tend to develop this like hollow and more cavernous sounding pronunciation style where they have these slightly more fluid transitions from syllable to syllable. It's almost as if they're like dragging their false chords through each consonant sound and vowel sound that they pronounce. Now, hopefully this makes sense to you. Once again, I'm a very visual learner, and this is just how, over time, I kind of developed this mental snapshot, this mental image of the common themes I hear in people who fry scream versus people who false chord scream. But now I'm just going to scream a bunch of different lyrics using each technique and also both techniques simultaneously. I just want you to listen, hopefully with headphones, so you can really start to pick up on the differences. I'm going to label which technique I'm doing. In some instances, I'll even scream the same lines with each technique so you can really hear the difference in how I sound and how I pronounce the words with each one.
I've been searching for strength to carry on, but I possessed it all along. The road has been hard, but I can't give up. I can't give up. I can feel the as the clock working march aside, wanting the hourglass to empty and choke at the signs of time. I watch so slip through my fingers, knowing you'll never be mine. Wrong, lying to pretend with weakness and humans. I wanna stay managed to sink into with the strength, but the spirit never withers. Since the script beginning, man has such a way to attain immortality. The authors of perdition devise a system for man to become machine. Man's cries for endless lies have made a method that is void of morality. This endless quest to escape death's caress has pushed us to the threshold of our sanity. Petrified and surrounded by demise, immeasurable power, even in infancy. Show me beyond in the darkness, says devastation to rust my mind. The blood emerges and invites me in. Eons of control, a shallow breath of mutiny. Claustrophobic, the walls seem to be closing in. Inhaling pestilence. You are the giants and my makers, ignorant of all they left behind, but this reign is mine. Blocking a foul exit, flames of confinement, trap the heart like a cage, wicked suffocating for all to pay, kissing that shall heal the cross and verse, while the helpless spray, lift the veil of reality. And with my scripture, I will summon the serpent's tongue. These words will become walls keeping angels from the light of the sun. This congregation bursts like a burst from the sky. The bodies of children, nightmares of the behind empty lies. Come wine, come all, in the honesty of these events. Come and wine, come in them all, for to death before they crawl. My glorious words of death, my seductive surgical, they come from all around the world to see my spectacle of filth. It's my name and history. There is this face in the still water I can remember ever wearing, like fingerprints on your heart, reading out the last lines of code to the untrained eye a secret. I plan away the last of you, so trust in shapes of combined resolve. We work alone. We work alone. We work alone. We work alone. Back home. Alone. Back home. I turn and walk away, 'cause I can't look you in the face without reaching for the rope. If it were wrapped around my neck, you just sit back and watch me choke. You just sit back and watch me choke. You feel the pull of the moonlight equilibrium, pitch black transmission of the soul, instincts from within rise. We're rabid beasts that hunger from inside. You must subdue this yearning to feast. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, 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 little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
And lastly, the distorted singing styles that you can do with either technique. With fry screaming, it's kind of like you're belting and really more so trying to hit a note, but you kind of lean into the fry scream just a tiny bit. You start to develop this kind of natural whininess in your voice, and you just subtly switch into the fry scream, and it adds just a hint of that distortion in your voice. My go-to examples for this are Sam Carter of Architects, and then Trevor Rankin of the band Personalities.
They say the good diet, no use in saying what is done is dead, 'cause it's not enough, and when the night gives way, it's like a brand new doomsday. I can't seem to find a way to break free from all I've ever known. How can I change what's chemical?
And with the false chords, it's more of just like supported and projected singing. You don't have to belt super hard to get it. It's just more of kind of figuring out how to position your false chords in such a way that they ever so slightly vibrate a very tiny bit while you are singing. And it gives you this like really gritty effect in your singing voice. I think about it like the stereotypical alternative rock vocalist. Or my favorite example, the Krusty Krab pizza song from SpongeBob.
Krusty Krab, yeah, 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 your pizza is the pizza, yeah, for you and me. 'Cause I don't need what you've been giving me, so gypsy woman, stay the fuck away from me.
Alright, so that's the end of this video. Hopefully this helped you gain a better understanding of the difference between false chord and fry screams. Hopefully now you have a better trained ear so that you can listen to other people scream and really be able to hone in and pick apart those tiny little details and patterns. And hopefully this helped you understand that really anything is possible with either technique, but it all depends on the super specific kind of style you might be going for and the little inflections that you might want to have, what you appreciate, what you hear most from other people's voice that you would kind of like to include in your own style. But that's all I've got for you, so if you like the way I teach metal vocals and you want to support my channel, please leave a comment, give a thumbs up, subscribe to Scream Theory. I'll see you all in the next video, probably in like 3 months. I don't know. It takes me forever to make these freaking things.